Hey there, lovely people. Welcome to Be Your Best You with Tash and Becky, your go-to hangout for all things spiritual, subconscious, and downright magical. We're here to sprinkle a little mystical wisdom into your everyday life and help you level up your reality.
Picture this as your cosmic coffee date, where we chat about the unseen world, blend in some psychology vibes and stir up the subconscious magic. Get ready to be the queen of your own reality, live a life that lights you up and have a blast doing it.
So grab your latte or your tea and let's dive into another episode of Be Your Best You, where the mystical meets the mundane and your best life awaits.
Cheers to creating magic together.
Let's do this.
Hey guys, can we ask you a favour?
Can we ask, if you haven't already, please make sure that you're following us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you can get updated with all the latest episodes every week when they come out. You never know, it might just be the thing that you need to hear at that time. Also, don't forget you can watch us on YouTube, so make sure you head over there and subscribe to us there.
And share with all your friends.
Thanks, guys.
Hi! Welcome back to another episode of Be Your Best You with Tash
and Becky, the guest edition.
Today we have on the show Matt Hodges. Matt's a spiritual life coach and he specifically works in the corporate world, trying to bring spirituality into the corporate world, but in a very grounded, subtle, down-to-earth way, which we really enjoyed hearing about, didn't we?
Yeah, and interesting to hear that other perspective, isn't it? To might resonate with a lot of you. Sometimes you just hear things differently, don't you? Coming from that, like you say, grounded. I like that grounded perspective, and the different language that he uses compared to us.
A bit more woo-woo. He's a bit less woo-woo, though our principles and the beliefs behind and the message and the purpose and the mission behind it is all the same. It all completely aligns. Yeah. But he's just coming from a less woo-woo, more grounded space. Yeah. So it was really interesting. We dove is that word? Yeah. We dove into what spirituality means to him and the way he views it with its core kind of values and principles. And it was just really interesting to hear it from that perspective. Yeah. And obviously he's a man as well, which we really love having these conversations with men, don't we? Yeah. We hope you enjoy. Today we have on the show Matt. Matt, welcome to Be Your Best You. How are you?
Hi, Matt.
I'm very good. Thank you for having me. This is all very exciting.
Awesome. So before we get started, we'd love if you would share with everybody just a bit about what it is that you actually do, and then a bit about your background, how you got here, because I always feel like people in our kind of line of work always have an interesting story and journey as to how we get to where we get to. So we'd love to hear more about that if you're happy to share.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so I'm Matt Hodges and I'm currently a professional coach. So from an engineering and project management background, but a few years ago retrained, kind of felt very stuck in life, wasn't happy, even though on paper should have been, but we can go into that later as well. So yeah, now a qualified coach, and I try to help people who are in a similar situation. So professional people who feel stuck, who kind of getting to the next level, but feel that the traditional routes and methods are not quite working for them. And people just looking for answers, but often not looking within themselves and looking externally. So I help them to see, where the real change can happen. Wow. But yeah, so I mean, that's my professional kind of background. But in terms of my lifestyle and family background, so I'm down in Southampton in the UK. In mid-30s, I've got, I'm just trying to think the key points, the highlights of an entire life. So mother was a counsellor, sister is a clinical psychologist. So I've always been raised in a kind of therapeutic family, you could say, background. And it was a Christian sort of family growing up as well, but as per the conversation, I will explain how that develops. But yeah, I fell in love with coaching because it was much more that positive, future-focused vibe, rather than having seen the more kind of traditional therapies, which are very heavy and very much needed, but just didn't click for me. helping people get to where they want to be just excites me, and has just turned into my complete passion and obsession in life now. So yeah, it's been a real about turn. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, how much detail do you want me to go back into in terms of my full background?
Well, I always find it interesting, because I know, when thinking from kind of, how I got to where I'm doing what I'm doing, which is kind of like the hypnotherapy and the coaching side of things. I went through some quite like big realizations for myself before I got to here where I am now. And what it was just like, almost like, oh my gosh, I see everything so differently now, and I want to share it with other people. But at the same time, I had this kind of spiritual awakening as well, which merged the two, like the mindset and the spirituality. And I was just, like you, I'm just living my passion now. And I feel like all of that happened because I had to get on that path. And there were quite a few big, things that happened to me, wasn't there, to get me there. So I just wonder, is anything like that, like anything significant like that happened to you?
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, I'll go into that. I mean, my main turning point, I'll go back. So my dad, he passed away from motor neuron disease when I was just before I turned 18. And that was the first kind of major traumatic event, and still the biggest of my life kind of thing. And I've written a blog on it in terms of all my kind of issues, shall we say. I've definitely not had the easiest ride. Again, people have it far worse, but you can never play sort of top trumps with trauma. It's just
100%
our own lives. But I also now very much see these tough times as what got me to where I am. Without them, I would still be stuck in my old mindset, my old way of thinking that was good enough, but wasn't actually making me happy. And my mother, who I mentioned as a counsellor, she's also been quite spiritual, and a bit of a kind of spiritual guide in my life. Wow. Even though for the first 30 years of my life, I wasn't ready to hear it. So, bless her, she's been telling me lots of interesting things over many years, and I just went, yeah, whatever, Mum. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, there's a lot of wisdom in that. So, that's it. We're all at a certain stage. You've got to be ready to hear these things. You can't be forced into it. But yes, that was, going through that series of operations, kind of depression, anxiety, a lot of downs, but I wouldn't change it now, 100%. I can see the silver lining. I can see without it, I wouldn't have started to look for alternative ways of living. That actually, I can't spend the rest of my life in this cycle of I'm fine for a few months and then I'm back down again. And yeah, it's just as well I did, and I'm happy. I'm in my mid-30s now, and I'm so pleased that actually I think I've got to a stage of life a lot sooner than many people might get there, which is a real privilege. But that's why now I'm helping other people get there, hopefully a little bit sooner than if they were just on their own. So yeah, it's from that, and then learning from kind of people like Eckhart Tolle, Richard Rohr. I just love their kind of. They gave me answers to questions I never knew I had, in a way. It was kind of always feelings I always had, and then they would say and put things into words, and I'd be like, oh, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
And I think, I like to think, obviously they are incredibly mature. They're kind of elders in our world, but hopefully I'm on the first few steps of that, and just a few things I can say might click for a few other people who are listening today and help kind of set that spark, which then ignites the fire for the real change kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, and then it's been my coaching training that's kind of brought it all together and given a practical tool set to be able to actually help people in a practical way to just do small changes over time that add up to a large kind of lifestyle change. And yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
I find that fascinating that you grew up with a mum. Were you going to say this as well? Yeah, that you grew up with a mum who was kind of almost, programming you, preparing you, ready, even though you weren't ready to hear it. It made me think of us and our kids. And we have our sons are the same age, and they're 16 at the moment. And we're kind of saying all this stuff to them, and you can see them going, yeah, all right, Mum. They humour us, don't they? They'll take the crystals and they'll have this and that. But we still do it, and we always say one day something's going to happen, something's going to click, and they're going to go, oh, I know, they were right, or I get what they're saying now. And you kind of just said it. It's almost like you've predicted our future, hopefully.
It's important you do that, because it is, if you don't say those things, then they'll never know that there is another path when they get to that point of needing it. So yeah, and I can see and I can feel for people who don't have that kind of influence in their life. How do you find it if nobody's ever exposed you to it? It's another way of thinking, and unless you go after it yourself or somebody tells you, then it's really hard to make that jump on your own.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, because for me, it's interesting because my mum was very spiritual, but we didn't really, I was just around it, but we didn't really have conversations, especially not like, I had with my children. But I think about it now when I look back, and I can see all the little things that she would say, and I would just take it as, I'd hear what she said and think, oh, okay, they've all stuck, and it's almost like you can see how they all join together and have led to get you to that final moment where you say, oh, I realized. But at the same time as well, going back to what you said with, people have to be ready, and it's, you feel for the people that weren't around that way of thinking. I find, and I don't know about you, but it helps me be more compassionate and understanding, because I know there are some people in our way of thinking in this spiritual world who get frustrated and angry at people when they can't see things from the way that we see them. And I don't have that at all. I have absolute compassion and understanding, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to get there in their right time. And honestly, if you'd have tried to get me there 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I would have just literally, it would have gone over my head. I would have thought, can you stop talking to me, please? It's absolute nonsense. Give me science, facts, and just disregarded it. So I really do see it from both sides, and it can only ever happen when you're ready. So you just can't force people into it, can you?
100%. That is the rule number one of coaching, is you have to take everyone where they're at. And you can't force change. As soon as you try and control any person, you just do the opposite and they start backing away, because nobody wants to be controlled. And it's not about controlling, it's just about offering tools, offering information that they can use as and when they're ready. And that's, I think that's the greatest thing we can kind of do for people.
Yeah, 100%.
And is that what you do in the corporate world, is it, Matt? Like when they're coming to talk to you, do you, just give them the tools? Can you tell if people are ready, or?
Yeah, it's it's kind of that, part of going into what I want to talk about is it's the way I approach things. I think I try and think, right, where was I, 10 years ago? What would have just turned me off? And if I'd used the word spirituality, I would have just been like, see ya, bye. Not interested. Whereas now I understand actually what spirituality is and what it means to me. I don't use the word. I just don't. I find it's got too much stigma. There's too many different meanings for the word. It's too big. So I'd say more kind of wholeness or connectedness, or things that just feel a bit less extreme and people can identify with. And if they respond to that, then you're like, okay, they're starting to see a different way of thinking, but using mainstream terminology, which
sneaky. I like it. So with that being said then, Matt, how would you describe spirituality? What is it to you? Because like you said, it has such a stigma about it. People have lots of, what's coming to mind is people wearing floaty dresses and crystal balls and like crystals. Yeah. And it's so much deeper than that, isn't it? But I'd really love to hear, like, what is it to you?
Yeah, I think for me, kind of the key, 2 words. So connectedness, that kind of the understanding that everything is connected. We are all connected, the environment, and at the fundamental core of all of our building blocks is energy. Everybody's made of energy, which you mentioned science as well there, which is another thing I love. Being an engineering background kind of thing, I like to have some evidence and some facts, and why not? And there's a chap called Bruce Lipton who's done like a book.
Love him. No, I love Bruce.
Because he kind of bridges the gap between the science and the spiritual world, which in the biology of belief, I loved it because it was one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, we can coexist. Actually, a lot of science is starting to just prove what this, the mystics and the spirituals have been talking about for thousands of years. And it's that connectedness. It's that kind of everything impacts everything else. And I love to think, being an empath, there's a lot of us are empaths in this world. That's why we feel things more. And I'm like, well, yeah. I start thinking, why do I feel pain and feel motivated to change other people's pain, get rid of their pain? And it doesn't make sense if you think of us all as individuals. But as soon as you start to think of us all as one, as connected, then I'm like, okay, well, if they're in pain, then I'm in pain because we're one thing. So actually, you could almost say it's a bit selfish motivation because I'm trying to get rid of their pain for my own benefit, and we're all in together. Is that ringing true to you as well, Tash?
Yeah, 100%. Can't agree more.
And so that's the kind of it all starts to make sense as you go into it.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you can't just jump. It's all, I've had little bits of information over time and little bits of changing the thought process and going, maybe I didn't have it quite right. And just being open to it I think is the main thing that you kind of try to teach people. And that comes in with the other word then. So connectedness is one, but consciousness is another. And that's why my business is conscious coaching, because I kind of want to attract people who might think, maybe there's a bigger way of thinking. And we do. We spend most of our life taught to think our way through life rather than to feel our way through life. And when you start to be conscious, it almost sounds a bit arrogant when you start to, you can even use the term woke, but I think that's been hijacked as well by a lot of other meaning of just nice coffee and things like that. But being conscious is just being aware that there's another way to think, there's another way to do things rather than the society we've been raised in, which is all about consuming and all about material and all about external validation. And it's like when you start to become conscious, you start to become aware, actually, these are marketing ploys, and my true happiness, my true contentment comes from a completely different place. So that to me is spirituality. It's not, I know you mentioned crystals and things like that. I'm not there.
Again, but it's different for everyone, isn't it?
100%. And I don't poo-poo it because I know everything is energy, and I know things resonate at different frequencies, and I know this does work. But for me, where I am in my life, I feel content and I feel happy, and the spiritual understanding I've got works for me.
Yeah.
And who's to say in 5-10 years' time it might be completely different? But right now, it's spirituality for me is about being connected and about being conscious.
And I think yes to that. Definitely. And it's so interesting you said that, because it reminds us of the conversation that we always have. When we first started this, like you said, it's like words have been hijacked, they've got meaning, but woke up, became conscious, whatever, however you want to say it, things that we now kind of openly accept, talk about, have integrated into our lives. We were like, whew, no, we're not there yet.
We're not ready.
Not ready yet. And then as the years have kind of moved on, and we've, like you said, little bits and pieces come in, and you start putting things together, you're working obviously on yourself, you expand your consciousness and your awareness. We've then been able to let other things in, and we're like, oh, okay, we see now, okay, we're ready for that. Let's take it where it is and know that there's going to be more that we'll be ready for whenever we get there, or that's not really for us right now, but actually we totally appreciate that for these people it works and it resonates with them. And I also think as well, we're all here, we've all been planted for different missions with the same goal, which is, I believe, this connectedness and bringing everyone back together and back into feeling rather than thinking. So that's like the main goal, isn't it? To raise and elevate consciousness, but we all do it in different ways, and we all have our own methods and gifts and abilities to do it. So for example, for you kind of came in through the engineering space, so you have that scientific mind. I went to medical school, I was going to be a doctor, I had that medical mind as well, but I also have all the background in knowing how and understanding how the body works, which then you add in Bruce Lipton, and then I just saw it, right. It makes sense. I get it now. It's like, this is what was missing. This is what didn't make sense to me before, and now it does. And I think that, then there are the other people who are really into crystals, and, I love a crystal, and I appreciate that their frequencies resonate at a very, what's the word? They're like, I don't know, they're secure, they don't move, do they? They've got like a really secure frequency, and they have different frequencies, and you can resonate with them and use them. I understand scientifically now, but I'm not
into them in a big way. Other people will use crystals to heal and, you know, all kinds of things. And that's what they've come here for, because I think we all need a bit of everything, don't we? And that's the beauty of, like we say, spirituality. It's not spirituality. It's who we are. It's coming back, I think, to how we are, our truth, and how we were always supposed to live.
So it's
and that
unique,
looks different,
isn't it, for each person?
Yeah.
And it's tapping into that, you know, like when you said, Matt, about how when you heard what resonates with you, isn't it? And then it all just opens up and starts to make sense. And there's an angle in for everybody, isn't it? It's just trying to find your thing.
Yeah.
Who you enjoy listening to.
Yeah, and then and you're going to be for a different set of people than potentially I might be for, because there's somebody for everyone, isn't there? And that's what I love about this.
Definitely. That's I think my main aim is to hopefully I can try and make it accessible. It's not even whether people know it or not in the first place. The reason if they come to me as a coach, then they're looking for something. And chances are, you know, if what they were looking for existed in material things, they would have found it already. So if they're still looking, then chances are there's something else they're looking for. And that's where it needs to be exposed slowly, though, because it can be a very inflammatory topic as well. But I believe everyone at their core is fundamentally good and spiritual. And, you know, whether you use the term spiritual to mean like a shaman or something, you know, extreme, etc., or just connected to the person next to them, to nature, to everything. I think when you start to kind of, the penny starts to drop and you go, oh, okay, yeah, maybe there's some truth in this. It can really, people can get that kind of sense of, it's not so much happiness, but contentment, that feeling that, gosh, okay, this just feels right.
Yes.
And it's not what I felt before. So then let's start exploring it further. And that's where it's really useful to have someone you can talk to about it.
Yeah, and like you said, just ask those questions, give a different perspective. How have you looked at it this way? Like, how about and you know, like you said, consciousness is one of the words you would use. I always use like curiosity as well. I just think the more you can be curious, the more open-minded you can be. Like, you don't have to believe everything. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's absolutely fine. But just be curious, be open-minded, because you never know what you'll allow in.
Yeah, that's a big one as well. Curiosity, that maybe we'll talk about it in a bit. But in terms of religion,
I was just going to come on to that actually.
Yeah. Again, that's something which, myself included, I was very angry at religion. You know, especially my dad passed away and things like that. I was thinking, oh God, how could you do this? Raised in a Christian kind of household, but so it was in the box, shall we say, but now it's very much out of the box. And that it's that curiosity is the key. I think I now realize, you know, any church or religious group or anything, if they don't encourage you to be curious, if they don't encourage questioning and doubts, then there's something wrong there. Because if your truth is truth, you'll encourage any kind of question, any kind of curiosity, because it's the truth. It doesn't matter. So that's where I see the kind of mainstream religion has let down a lot of people, because the core fundamental essence of most major religions is actually good. It's spiritual. It's that connectedness, that essence of we are all one and we are moral people together. But mankind, you know, lo and behold, uses things for power, for money, for taking it on. And that's unfortunately that's what people see in the media is, you know, the religion which doesn't actually portray the essence of why it first began. And yeah, it all comes back to that curiosity. If, you know, the church was open to questioning, then it would be a very different place, I think. But we are where we are.
Definitely. And I find when you get into the spirituality, for me anyway, actually religion or parts of it, because I'm not religious, but it started to make sense. So it came that way round. So once I understood spirituality, I'm like saying, oh, no, I understand what they were trying to teach us in school about Jesus. So I wonder if that's a way in to come back to the true meaning of religion, where it's before it was all messed up with the power and, you know, how they rewrote it all. But I just found it really interesting how quotes from the Bible started to make sense to me.
Yeah, because you're flipping that perspective, you're reading it from a different point of view, aren't you? And then you can see, I can see where that's been manipulated or misunderstood or indoctrinated,
right.
and
you can make sense of it.
Yeah,
you can see through it, and you can also take from it what resonates, like you said. It's so interesting, isn't it? And I expect you must have switched so many people onto this. Have you seen like big results from, like, life-changing results from people?
Yeah, you can, and it's funny because it's still in the corporate world, so it's still, I'm not changing people from, completely who they were, but it's almost just ways that you can live your life. So you can still be in the same situation, but all of a sudden your mindset, your feelings, your emotions are joyous. It's a different way to be. And I think people cotton on eventually, especially when I start suggesting books like The Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle, things like that, and then they're like, oh, this is interesting. And certainly, if the first session I'd said go away and read that book, they never would have come back, kind of thing. So you've got to wait for the time when they're going, okay, A, they trust me and they trust my recommendations, but B, I feel that actually they're open to it. And normally it comes from the client would say certain things, would say, I feel empty, I feel lost, I feel there's just something missing. And as they start to talk about emotions, they naturally become more spiritual, even though they don't realize it in that way. And they become more open to it. And just by being in that safe space where they can explore, because often, family and friends, we can't talk about these things openly. There's a lot of taboo. The conversation is very much agendaed. Even with friends and family who are there to support you, everybody has their own agenda. As coaches, we're trained to go, no, my judgment is not part of this conversation. It's very much about you, and let's just see where this goes. And I think that's really freeing for people to have that communication.
100%.
Empowering as well, isn't it? It's like empowering the individual. That's what you do, Tash, as well, isn't it? They're finding the answers, you're facilitating it, you're opening them up to it.
Yes. And I think that's a really good point. I do think that's another part of this being spiritual, is stop looking to the external world for answers and remembering that actually you have all the answers within you. I think that's a huge part of being, like, the understanding of spirituality, if we're going to call it that, because that's where I feel like we need to get back to again, is trusting the knowledge that we have, or the wisdom that we have inside ourselves, building up your intuition. I don't know where you sit on that, but like, how are you about using your intuition and signs and synchronicities and stuff?
100%. My gut feeling now is my compass rather than my brain.
Amazing.
So, and there's just, on a practical sense of, I do personality profiling as well, and just learning how different people are thinkers or feelers, and just the way you speak. I've noticed now certain people I know will go, I think X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I feel X, Y, Z. And I don't even realize I'm saying it, but actually it shows a different way of being. But 100%, I always, just what would your gut tell you? Just take it back to what feels right. Because I think we don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't give our bodies enough credit for knowing what's right for ourselves. And rather than following what we should do or what we've been told or raised to do, what is it you want? What is it that's actually at the core? I don't care what your parents want. I don't care what your school says you should do. I don't care what your company or your boss says. What do you want? And a lot of people have turned that side of themselves off. And when you start to turn that on again, all of a sudden things become easier as well, because then you've got that kind of compass, that filter to know, I know who I am, what I want, where I'm going. And I don't need anyone else to support me in that.
100%. And going back to, you said, so you're working in the corporate world, and I just, hats off to you, because obviously I'm working outside here. Like, people will find I say, my people will find me. So a lot of the people I work with are at least open to this kind of spirituality, because I also do past life regression as well. And obviously I have this podcast and we talk about all the unseen world and spirituality, so people know what I'm about. So that helps me attract in those kind of people. However, I still do work with people who are not with that viewpoint at all, and just like you, I judge it. And it's been amazing, you know, some of the people that I've just thought I'm never going to be able to have the conversations that I would like to have with them, they get there themselves. I don't force it. And you know, it just still, so I'm thinking of a couple of people in my mind now, and they've ended up having past life regressions, and they're reading books like Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, and all these kind of like listening to channelings and stuff. And I just think it's amazing. And I've definitely lost my train of thought as to where I was going here.
I know what you're going to say.
No,
she said hats off to Matt.
Right, yes. Yeah. Go on, you take over. It was the corporation.
Just because obviously you're really up against, you know, you're getting more people that are ready to hear these things, aren't you? So it must be difficult to, to come across maybe people who are pushing back on what you're but that's where you're clever with your, you know, your language.
That's it. I just have to remember where I was, and it's also, I don't go into, like, I don't advertise myself as a spiritual coach, because I'm not. And there's transactional coaching, so I can help people with very much, they just want to get from A to B. Fine, not a problem. But there's the transformational coaching side, which I much prefer, and that holistic aspect. And again, I wouldn't use the word holistic. Don't advertise using that word, because I find that turns a lot of people off. But all it means is we just look at the big picture. You know, why not? Let's just take a step back from the goal you've got, and let's look at your life in general and see if you still want to achieve that goal after you've reassessed the situation. So yeah, I think there's, and that's the thing I want to do. I want to help people get to where they want to be. But often, I think, like you said, you know, Tash, people you work with, but they're probably attracted to you for a reason in the first place, even though they don't know why. But they're there talking to you, and therefore actually it turns out to be the right match. And I think that's the same with me. You know, people, you know, everybody has to go to work. We live in a world that needs corporations. We still need money. You got to do your practical side of life. And I think a lot of people, they think spirituality and having money or nice things can't coexist. And that's something as well I'm really keen to try and dispel. And that, no, you can have a nice car and be in touch with your emotions. Like, whoever told you otherwise? It's not.
Why do we assume this? I think I probably did the same thing.
And that's a really interesting point as well, because there's definitely this stigma around, well, if you're spiritual or if you're working in those kind of jobs, like me as a past life regressionist, obviously I can do, it's not me doing it, it's them, but I can facilitate a lot of healing in past life regressions. And you have mediums and stuff like that who can deliver so much healing to people, you know, who are in grief or etc. But then there's this stigma that says, well, if you have gifts like that and if you can do that, you shouldn't be charging, or you should only be charging a small amount. And I'm like, oh no it doesn't have to be like that. And actually it shouldn't be like that, because then you're going on to a whole nother avenue of like, and this is where I work, you know, as a hypnotherapist, I'm very much focused on trauma, like childhood trauma, and rewiring limiting beliefs. I'm like, that's just a belief you have that is limiting your view of the world. Now, you can think that and you can have all your judgments, but how about you look at it this way? Everything has to be an energy exchange. You know, there is somebody for everyone. You know, everyone's willing to pay. What seems really, really expensive to you might seem like a bargain to somebody else. You have to decide where you want to be and what you want from life, and then you go ahead and create it, as long as it's obviously always coming from love and you've got, you know, the highest intentions for everybody involved. Then the world's your oyster.
Definitely. I think that's the key, is if your intentions are there to help others, you know, we should live in a society where the richest people are the helpers, the carers, the nurses, the people who make a difference, not the footballers and things like that. You know, I love it, but let's be honest, that we can live without it. And, you know, I think everybody at their core knows it. Everybody understands that and would agree. But again, you know, we're raised in a society, and it's that also that roll of the dice as to where you're born, what family you're born into, the opportunities you get. It can make your life fantastic or really difficult. But we all have access to our spiritual inner being, our true self. And if we were taught that from young, there would be a lot less suffering in the world. There would be a lot less pain. And there'd be people who can just enjoy what they've got, but also benefit from it. And yeah, I'm definitely all about that kind of helping corporations to see they can be, I think, more profitable. They can be more financially successful if they actually embrace the people side of their business, because that's what makes every business. Every business is made of people. And if you raise your people up, you raise your customers up, you raise everyone up, then that flows round, and what goes out comes back in tenfold. So, but yeah, it's a really hard message. You can't just go in saying that.
No, no, you can't. And also, like, we've done a lot of work, like both personally and together, like on being okay with triggering people and saying things that are going to upset a lot of people and that people don't really want to hear, and that's okay, because like you said, some people are ready to hear what we have to say and just want more and more and more of it and use it and love it, and then other people they don't like it, and that's okay. We're not here to kind of talk to those people, because there's somebody else for them that maybe they'll be ready to hear what we have to say later, but maybe they won't. And again, this is interesting because I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I mentioned that I do past life regression. So from that point of view, from seeing and hearing from hundreds of clients that I've spoken to their higher selves, and I've seen their past lives, I'm like, this is all just lessons. It's a game of learning to evolve our consciousness. And so, like you said, yes, it is luck of the draw as to where you're born and what you're born into, or is it because did you choose that to learn particular lessons, to remember who you are and kind of evolve your soul, evolve your consciousness? And I feel like when I look at things like that, or when other people can look at things like that, it takes away that heaviness and gives you more of an opportunity to be able to then do what you were saying, you make the best of it and use it as lessons and learning. And I just don't think anybody's stuck where they are. Depending on your beliefs and how you see the world and your viewpoint, there is always ways that you can get yourself out of situations, even if that's not, like I'm saying, you can make yourself a millionaire. Maybe that's not your path, but if you're tuned into your intuition and you're living from this place of connectedness, oneness, growth in your consciousness, you're going to be happy no matter where you are in life. It doesn't mean that you have to get yourself into a huge house and have a lovely car and have a great job. You might be exactly where you are, but you're going to be happy there.
That's exactly it. And that's one of the things, again, I wouldn't tell people, you can be rich and you can be spiritual, but it just so happens that normally the more spiritual you become, the less important those material things happen to be. But that's for each person to feel as they go along their journey. And I felt that myself, I was very materialistic in my past and very much chasing the things, thinking that would make me happy. But then learning the difference between happiness and pleasure and starting to understand, and then starting to really feel content, and then going, gosh, I've never had this feeling from any kind of material possession. It starts to change your wants and desires. And now I hunger more for kind of knowledge and self-understanding than the nice cars and things like that, although I wouldn't say no. So it's and
this is the thing, I always say that to people, like, you would be silly to say I don't enjoy having nice things, or I don't, I would say no to if somebody gave me a lovely car. That would be silly. No, you wouldn't. But you hit the nail on the head. I think you realize, I'm just thinking, like, sometimes, and if my like 7 year ago self heard me saying this now, I'd be rolling my eyes and like, oh. But if I just sit on the grass barefoot, looking up at the blue sky, hearing the birds, and I'm like, this is pure happiness to me. I don't need anything else. This right here, that feeling you get, nothing can buy that. And the more you start, and again, there will be some people that hear that and go, oh my gosh, I would have done. But until you feel it, you can't explain it. But once you feel it, that becomes addictive, that feeling, doesn't it?
100%. And I probably would lose a lot of customers if they hear me saying these kind of things, but it's that, that corporate world where money is king, and it takes over everything. We are raised to consume. We're raised to need more because that's what makes more money. So that's what we're taught. I've forgotten there was a key point I was going to say, but anyway, that kind of, when you do start to feel it, you do start to understand it. It's really powerful, and it's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden it takes the pressure off as well, having to work non-stop and in the rigid, 40, 50, 60 hours a week to be happy. You're like, oh yeah, I can just walk in the sun. I can have that same level of happiness as going on that 5-star holiday, which is just liberating, because all of a sudden it takes that money pressure off as well. You're like, okay, providing I've got my base needs covered, I'm safe, I've got my shelter, my food, my family's good, then I don't have to keep trying to get to that next place and keep wanting more and being happy when I get this, when I get that, when I get it, because you end up living your life until you're dead going, I'll be happy when the journey's come to an end.
And that's the realization, isn't it? I think, I know for me, the same as you, Becky was never like this, but I was definitely, when I got into this kind of world, and I realized about manifestation, and that we have a lot more control than we think we do, and blah blah blah. I was like, right, okay, right now, so I need to manifest this dream career. I want to have earn such and such amount of money a month, and the whole while I was doing it, I was like, this doesn't feel right to me. But now it feels like I should, because I can. It feels like I know something, and it feels like I should. And then it took me a while, and I was just like, no. And lots of things happen to get me there. It's part of the journey, and I'm grateful for it, because I think you need it to get to the place that you're obviously in now. I'm in now. You were in anyway. But that you're like you said, I don't need, that's what I thought I wanted. It's what society has told me I should want, and I've never stopped to think that's not it. But then obviously, again, from where I'm coming from, I work with kind of all these limiting beliefs we have, these things that we hold on to from childhood, and a lot of it, especially with money, I do a lot of work around this, is around inner safety, and we get our safety from money, and it's a huge thing, isn't it? So what I was doing was working on just developing a sense of safety within myself, so that I didn't need money. I was identifying why I felt like I needed money. We did a podcast on it, and basically the root, when I got down to it, the root of what I was scared of is that if I don't put out a social media post, I'm going to be homeless, abandoned, on the streets, desolate, with nothing. And that was where my subconscious mind was taking me, which was fueling this desire of what I thought was, I just want to earn a certain amount of money. It wasn't about that. And that's why I love working with people, because I help them identify and get rid of that, to hopefully then push them closer towards where we are now, where we can say, oh, we don't need that. Walking in the sun is not. So is a lovely 5-star holiday. I love a holiday, don't get me wrong, but you don't strive for it. But also what I wanted to say is that when you're walking in the sun and you forget, the money, going back to the corporations and the people that you work with, if they allow themselves to go and walk out in the sun and just listen to nature, calm their nervous system, ironically, they would give themselves space to have their intuition drop in, and they might have a sudden brainwave as to, we could do that at work, which will lead them to actually earning money in a much more effortless and easy way than the striving that they did before.
100%. No, I do. I feel, when you open yourself up, that creativity flows. And it's learning, what your values are. So the company obviously should have values as well in a corporate structure, which often are just lip service. It's not necessarily how they actually manage the company. But it's important that if you're working for someone, working for a company, that understanding who you are, your values, your beliefs, if that doesn't align where you are, then that's usually a very big red flag. And that's a case of, okay, we can start to look at how we change things. But that's why I'd like to get more as well into that kind of the corporate structure, the culture of how you can actually help companies to live their values and to live the values of their employees and their staff. And it just is, to me, it's just painfully obvious. Everybody benefits, and then you have more productivity, you have more quality of output. It's just obvious, but it wasn't obvious, and that's why I never judge anyone. I never would expect anyone or poo-poo anyone for not understanding these kind of things, because that was me a while ago as well. It takes time to unlearn certain behaviors, doesn't it? And that was, I think, that was the one thing I came back to me as well, was the I definitely for a long time I always felt I needed to let go of chasing the money and following the typical corporate lifestyle. But what was stopping me was, at the core of my kind of money belief was, if I decided to actually pursue my true self and my spirituality, then that would mean I would no longer have any motivation to make any kind of money or to have anything nice. Kind of, it was one or the other. And now I know, obviously, that's not true. I have more motivation. It's just focused in a way that energizes me rather than takes energy away from me. And I think a lot of people have that. They think you're either spiritual or you're in the Western society and you're corporate, and you can't have both. It's like, no, you totally can. We're all people. We can live that.
That's so important. What you're doing, Matt. Can you imagine a world where all the corporations? How amazing would that be?
Is that what your mission is? Because I know, like, when I'm doing all the work that I'm doing, whatever it is, working with clients, doing the podcast, I kind of have this overarching mission that I feel like I'm here for. What is yours, and is that to do with the whole working with corporations?
Yeah, I think there's obviously the individual aspect of helping each person kind of find their true self. So the main, rather than looking for that external validation, it's understanding we need to look within. And that's actually a lot easier than a lot of people think. But yeah, we're taught to look externally. We're taught that everything outside of us gives us what we need within. Rubbish. We all know that here, kind of thing, but it takes time to learn that. On the corporate level, I think what I see is that most corporations have lost their why. And so I've written a blog on this as well, but in terms of when I say their why, it's kind of, what is the reason that a business exists? What is the reason that a corporate entity exists? Every business had a human who at some point decided to start it. And that human had a train of thought, had a feeling as to why they thought it would be a good idea to create that business. Often it's because they think, well, it will make me money. But then the core of that is because it will improve the quality of life. It will enrich them somehow. So at the core of every generation or every creation of every business is it should be improving the lives of humanity and of the people who work with it, the people that they serve. And I think that why has been lost. It's stopped at we're here to make money and we're here to improve the lives of the shareholders. But if they got back to their true why, and the nature of why anything exists is to improve our own lives, then I think there'd be a huge change in terms of the way that things are run, the values that are actually adhered to. But it can feel overwhelming because, it's, look at the world at the moment, it just feels really dark and difficult at times. But it's important that we have these conversations and we know that actually, I think the majority of people are spiritual, well, know they're spiritual, whether they recognize it or not, but they want that kind of connectedness, that consciousness, rather than, and a lot of people then go, well, then you're talking about communism if you're helping everybody and sharing it all out. It's like, no, come on, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We can live in a sensible world where our morals are listened to and we trust our gut, and everybody wins. And I don't think that's such a pipe dream.
Do you feel that shift that people are experiencing more towards this way?
Yes and no. It's a tough one. Obviously, you can see there's a lot of unrest in the world. There's a lot of kind of protests, riots, and I love kind of the younger generations, the students tend to be the ones that kind of protest the most. And it does always make me chuckle. And, the older generations, or even my generation, go, oh, the kids today, they're made of cotton wool. And you're like, well, hang on, we're all products of the generations that raised us. So if you're going to point the finger, you point the finger at yourself and say, the world as it stands at the moment is a product of the oldest generation because they've had the most time to shape it. And we have a responsibility as we go to learn and to grow. And I think a lot of people just find it easier to point the finger than to take the blame sometimes. Yeah. But when I do see the conflict and the growing kind of social movements, that does give me courage because that is the majority of people. Seeing the richest people getting richer and it's not flowing back round, you're like, well, that's not going to last forever because a society can't function where there's not a working class, there's not a middle class. If the middle class isn't wealthy enough to function, then you get high levels of poverty and you get a very excluded level of the wealthy. And whether the wealthy like it or not, they need everyone else. We all need each other. And so actually, I think it will get worse, but then it will get better because that just seems to be how humans learn. We learn from going through the pain rather than just learning from the past. But it's the way it is.
Yeah. No, that's exactly how we see it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's how I find it fascinating talking to you because we're talking about the exact same thing, aren't we? We're doing the same thing, we have the same views, but you're, like we spoke about earlier, you're in your kind of arena working your way with your work in the corporate levels, and you're kind of hitting that side of things. And I'm here doing it with women and bringing women like into their power more again, hoping that they will be able to step up because, like you said, the wealthy people should be the healers, the the carers, the people that are helping, that are heart-led, and not just wealthy. Like I feel like the people leading corporations, the people in power. My hope is that more of people like us who are empathetic, who are heart-led, who are driven by this connectedness and have this view, whether they know it or not, of spirituality, we need them to remember who they are. Remember, get them to step back into who they truly are, follow what makes them happy, like you said, bring them back to realizing what lights them up, because then you're going to have more and more people then that end up like you and I, who are living our passions, working, helping others. And that's how I see what you're seeing, like in terms of the corporations living these values out. That's how the world gets to be. And okay, it might not be in our lifetimes, but whatever, in future generations, our kids, our grandkids, they're going to get to live in a world where everyone's working in areas that they actually want to work in. You send your child to a school, the teachers actually want to be teachers. Like you have like companies that are whatever doing all these big companies that yes we need to have, but they're all of a sudden being led by people who see us all as equals and know that the universe is abundant and know that they can share with everyone. It doesn't have to be this scarcity, grab everything, everyone gets to
scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset is a huge one, isn't it? And that's that's a really good way of describing it. Our business model in the West is about scarcity. It's about there's not enough, we need to take and hoard it. If people just shifted and just said, oh, there's always enough, plenty, how different would it be? People wouldn't hold on to things, wouldn't hold on to wealth. They'll just be like, yeah, it's fine, we'll let it go, and it flows through you and you become richer for it. So it's hard though to get that message across, and it takes time.
It is, and that's why then, like you said, you go back to just looking at the individuals and working on the individuals, because by doing that, we're all connected. It is a ripple effect, and it's going to start spreading. And I feel like, we're at the point where we're in a bit of a lag at the moment, and everyone's kind of waking up, turning on, asking questions. COVID did that beautifully for us, didn't it, really? Let's be honest. And I feel like eventually all these people that have kind of started questioning things and saying, why am I getting up every day to go to a job that I hate, that stresses me out, and they start going towards their passions and what they really actually want to do and came here to do, we're then going to start seeing the effects of that
a little bit later on,
Yeah.
but I'm really looking forward to that.
Not too far away.
No, I know. But it is a journey. Like you said, it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
So that you have to pull it back, don't you? And just be like, right, one person at a time. And then...
And it's all, if, another argument I hear is, well, what's the point of us doing our small thing when you look at the rest of the world? If they're not doing it, then what we do doesn't matter. But it's like, no, that's not the point. If everybody had that mindset, then yeah, I mean, the world, humanity would disappear. The world will be here long after we're gone. But if you can just look after yourself and look after the people around you and do your own bit for society, if everybody had that mindset, well, change would happen easily, right? And it wouldn't be a problem and it wouldn't be difficult or stressful. So it is very much understanding and kind of not using excuses in a way. It can be easier to just go, what's the point? My bit doesn't matter, then I won't do it. But, it's just because something's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It's often the opposite. When things are hardest, that's when we need to put the effort.
That's it. And the hardest lessons are the best teachers, aren't they? Really, the hardest the experiences that we have, they're our biggest teachers and most powerful teachers, aren't they? Definitely.
And then, so that kind of going into the corporate structure as well. So I talked a bit about values, and that's what again, another way with the terminology, I wouldn't go into a corporation and say, right, let's look at your values and let's make them spiritual. That's just not going to work. But
get out.
that's not what I paid you for. But just things like compassion, integrity, trust, even kind of wisdom or listening skills, environmental protection. All of these things actually are spiritual because it's all just, it's looking after everything that's around you and it's serving the people that you're with. So if you just talk about general values, often people are fine with that. They haven't got an issue. But these are spiritual values. This is the same thing. And then it's this next step is obviously then, okay, how are you actually living those values? Where's the evidence that you are leading from integrity? And a lot of CEOs, I think there's a growing movement in the kind of CEO class of, they want to lead, they want to be conscientious CEOs, they want to be compassionate, they want to lead with integrity, because then all of a sudden you have a workforce that follows you because they respect you rather than because they fear you. And that workforce will go above and beyond. They'll be there when times are tough. Whereas if there's a workforce that fears you, when times are tough, they'll leave you. They won't. There's no allegiance. So again, it's that kind of, come on, if you put out this love and care and attention, when you need it as a company, there'll be people there to give it back and will stick with you. And that's also around branding and things like that. Where brands portray those spiritual values, people are more likely to stick with them, even if they cost more, because it identifies with who they are and they want to support that. So it's a mutual kind of win-win in that regard.
I think that's brilliant. I have a question. When you're working, obviously you work in these corporations, do you work mostly with men or do you work with women as well?
Largely, it's a mix. It can be a mix, obviously, kind of through HR departments, tends to be more female-oriented kind of thing. But then, sadly as well, a lot of the managers and CEOs are still quite male-dominated, which is not ideal. But again, we are where we are. You just have to go with where you're at. That's it is a more male-dominated world, and especially for me, the connections I've got is more in the engineering, construction, security kind of world. So that's much more male-dominant.
Yeah, I just find that interesting because I wonder how many people or women who are listening are kind of in that corporate, that kind of world, and what their kind of views on it are, and if it's different from men. But I just find it also interesting having these conversations with men. But actually, when we've been talking, I don't know whether you've thought of this, but I think of my husband, and he recently started up a company in insurance. And he's got all his values. I've watched how he works. All his values are just like what you're saying, basically. It's like he's worked with you and you. Honestly,
kind of told him. I was thinking of Chris when you were speaking. It's like it's just
it's in
how
him,
he's
isn't
made,
it? Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is why he's going to be successful, and he is successful because of how he treats his employees. You know, he's so heart-led, isn't he?
He's really heart-led, and in his, again, he started the company up with a passion, with I want to make insurance a great experience for our customers, which is, you know, like insurance, like, but and like you were saying with the whole keep your workforce happy, you know, because then they will be, and it's not about, well, I'm going to keep them happy so then you'll be, you know, good to me. It's not that. He genuinely wants everybody to do well, because he knows that if everybody does well, he's obviously going to benefit from that as well. But it's coming from that place of, but I want you to do really well, and I want this specific person to do well, and I watch him and I see it, and I just think, and we've had this conversation before, haven't we? I thought, God, if all the big corporations could run in the way that Chris runs his, we'd be living in such an awesome world. And then it's great to hear that that's like your mission, that's what you're going in and you're doing. I just think it's amazing. I do think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and it's that helping people to see that it's gone are the days of being the big bad boss to get productivity up. It's like, no, work with people, show your compassion, show your love, show your vulnerability. People will work for you for much longer, much harder. It's just no, that's great to hear though that is happening as well.
Yes, it is. Your work is rippling out. It's definitely happening, and it's just such a cool place, you know, to be. And he's happy, he loves it, and everyone's happy, and they have such fun. And it's just a company, you know, people want to work with. And for a very new business, he's been so super successful. And I know, because I watch him from the outside, and I know it's because of how he works. He's doing it in this new way that I feel like all of the corporations and all of the companies moving forward have to work, because eventually it's not going to work anymore, and it is going to crumble, and it needs to be people like this who are bringing forth this new way of working. And I just think, it's great.
Yeah, people are voting with their feet now as well. And as you know, more companies are started and are kind of run in that conscientious way, people have the options. And so, eventually it's also a case of survival for these companies. If they don't change, if they don't figure out, actually, you need to adapt with the times, and the new generations want development, they want support, they want to feel valued, then you won't have any employees. So, you know,
exactly.
It's all for their benefit.
Yeah, it is exactly right. Oh, Matt, it's been awesome talking to you today. We've had such a great conversation.
Interesting.
I hope you've enjoyed your first podcast experience.
Great.
Good, awesome. Before we go, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience, like one most important message that you would like to leave everybody with today?
What message? Oh, that's a tough one. The first thing I'd like, there's just one life lesson, which I mentioned earlier, around happiness and pleasure. It changed my life massively in terms of just understanding the difference. A lot of us feel like we're chasing, or we look for pleasure in order to get happiness. And pleasure essentially doesn't last. So Eckhart Tolle puts this much better, but in terms of pleasure is something which goes up. You buy a nice car, fantastic, you feel happy, but that isn't sustainable. Eventually you get bored of that car and you're on to the next thing. Happiness is a choice. Happiness, for me, is very much a contentment. It's an underlying feeling that even when I'm having shit times, I'm going through a load of rubbish, I know I'm okay. I know on a fundamental level, I'm okay with who I am in humanity, and I will be okay in life. That is true happiness, and that for me is misunderstood. A lot of people get the nice car because they want to be happy, but actually they're getting pleasure. Whereas actually when you stop and go, okay, what am I after here? Am I buying something because I feel unhappy, in which case that's not going to solve your problem on the long term? Or do I just want some pleasure? In which case, not a problem as well. Go and have the nice thing, but just be aware that that's not going to last, and that's not going to actually alter your happiness. And I think for me, that's one thing I always try and explain as soon as I can with any clients, kind of thing, because it's a subtle shift. But until you understand there is a difference between happiness and pleasure, and actually stop and ask yourself, what is it that you're chasing? Then you can't take steps to make changes. So that for me is a kind of big life lesson that I think is really important. And then I guess the other not life lesson or anything, just important thing is, I think, just don't be afraid to be who you are.
Yes.
Trust your gut. That we are all spiritual, and we just have to find that safe space that we can explore and let it out for most of us. But when you do, you won't regret it. And you'll find your people, you'll find your tribes. Don't worry about everyone around you telling you no, putting you back down. Just follow your gut, explore. And remember, there's the likes of all of us are here to help you, and we've all been where you've been. So come and join the party.
Oh, I love that. I got goosebumps. Thanks, Matt. I love that. Right, that's it. I'm not saying anything else. I think we're going to leave it on those wise words.
Please. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks, guys. We will see you next time for another episode of Be Your Best You. Bye.